Welcome to Celebrate a Sister podcast. I'm your host, Emma Walkinshaw. I'm a transformational coach. I'm also the founder of Embody Me program and the creator of 21 Minutes of Morning Magic. You may also find me on the yoga mat leading yoga sessions and also running retreats here in Australia and internationally. Here on the podcast, I bring you some pretty incredible guests. We talk all things self-belief, body acceptance, personal development, outdated beauty standards, and we also call BS on the toxic diet culture, accepting the beautiful bodies we were born into, letting go of all the beliefs, and raising our self-awareness. I also come to you from time to time with a little solo episode, a little Life According to Emma moment. I'm so glad you're here. Enjoy. Welcome to this week's episode of Celebrate a Sister. This week, I'm joined by the gorgeous Courtenay Rodwell, which is an absolute pleasure and delight to have her. I'm going to quickly fill you in how Courtenay helps people in the world. So Courtenay supports clients through transitions, guiding them to bring them back who they truly are, achieving rapid positive change in their lives. Courtenay helps her clients facilitate clarity, connection, releasing them from what's holding them back. She does this through transformational coaching, NLP, and a whole heap of magic. Hello, Courtenay.
Hello. I'm so excited to be speaking with you today. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, thanks for saying yes. We met just recently and I listened to you speak and take us through a beautiful little presentation, and it was nothing short of wonderful. I had lots of little aha moments. So
good.
Thank you, Courtenay. You have some really great, I guess I could say, earthy energy. You are so real and so honest about your own story and your own journey and how you've landed here and how you help people. So I did want to dive in and ask you a few questions today, and it will definitely unfold how you have arrived where you're at. So you do a lot of work with NLP, that's for sure, and coaching. So when you work with clients specifically about leveling up their life, what are some practical NLP techniques that you share?
So I think the biggest one of the NLP sort of factor of what I do, because I use a few different approaches with my clients, and it's not really a formal, now we're going to do this, now we're going to do this. There is a process to it. But NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnotherapy are the triad. That's what I use to affect change very quickly. So in terms of the NLP aspect of it, NLP is just the language of the mind. So it is how we process and how our mind processes all of the experiences that we've had to date and the language that we use with ourselves. So the NLP aspect of how I work with clients is I figure out what language they're using to themselves in order to classify their experiences. So because based on that classification and that sort of perception of their experiences, that's what creates their thoughts and what they feel about themselves. And that then drives their action and what shows up in their life. So in terms of practical, aspects of that, I can bring it down to majority of awareness. Is NLP teaches you to decipher the language that you're using in your head and what you're telling yourself about that, and that determines the actions that you take. So the first practical application is awareness, the second is accountability, and the third is action. They're my three major fundamental steps of enacting any change in anyone.
So what was it? Accountability. So those of you
awareness first.
Awareness.
Yep, awareness first. Accountability is the second. And a lot of people struggle with accountability, and that's why they have trouble affecting so much change on their own, is because if you take accountability for everything that happens in your life, a lot of people struggle with the fact that that might mean that they're at fault for all the bad things. So then they start all of these stories in their head about what that fault means, and then they don't take action because of it. So you can't take action if you don't take accountability for the fact that everything in your life is a result of you and the decisions you've made up until this point. So once you become okay with that and with taking accountability, the empowerment comes back and you think, well, if I'm responsible for this, I can change my actions and I can get other results. And that's what NLP is. It's the study of excellence and what we want to achieve and reverse engineering that as to how we create that in our own life.
I would assume there's a bit of forgiveness work in there too, particularly when we're taking accountability.
Big time.
Yeah. And then I would imagine, and I'm thinking through my own experience here, when we do take accountability, it not flicking us back into that language, which reinforces the circular mindset or the inner critic that keeps our things. So there's got to be a break in the circuit there in that accountability. But to me, accountability is seeing it for what it is, the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when people struggle with accountability and struggle with the truth is that, you know, there's a difference between cause and I talk a lot about cause and effect. When I get with my clients to that, I suppose, perception of cause and effect, that you are causing everything in your life and these are the effects. A lot of people, I have to break it down even further and say, okay, if cause doesn't equal fault, you know, and I think a lot of people struggle with this concept of fault and this concept of, you know, well, if I take accountability, you know, that means that it was my fault that I did this. And especially if you're speaking with, you know, anyone who's had any type of trauma, you know, especially at the hands of somebody else like I did, they can get stuck on that. Yes. And they can, you know, think, well, it wasn't my fault that somebody raped me. You know, it wasn't my fault that somebody beat me. And that they were the stories that I was telling. But cause is very different when you really, the only fault that you need to accept is that you were physically there.
Yeah.
That you were in that situation and the choices that you had made until that point to date that person, to be out that night, you know, there's no story that is necessary for that, but that's where people get stuck. Yeah. And there's a lot of fear around that. So yes, there's definitely forgiveness that needs to come in that you just need to realize that everything is okay, you know, and sometimes it takes somebody who can support you in that process. And that's why I do what I do with my clients is you need someone to hold your hand sometimes and go, okay, what are the stories that makes that not okay? What do you need to, it's not a question of, you know, I need to be perfect. And because I was telling myself those stories as well. And therefore I couldn't forgive myself for anything that wasn't that. I couldn't forgive myself for any time that I wasn't perfect. And that the fact that I allowed all of this into my life was a big hurdle for me and one that I see a lot of people struggle with.
Even when we say forgiveness, and it feels to me even making peace with that. Yeah. Just finding a place where, like you say, we don't make it mean anything or make it, you know, because we're meaning-making machines. We always have to have a meaning for something, but it's making peace and forgiving and being at peace with it, which I guess that's where you need a coach, a facilitator, a therapist to really walk alongside you, because I agree that is the bit that is really hard to do alone because sometimes you need that person there asking some really great questions to help you move through it.
Yeah, and holding you in that emotional space too, because, you know, you lose, I think it's either 80 or 85% of your brain function when you are reacting emotionally to something. So if you're struggling in an emotional space, if you've got someone there that can hold you in that space and bring you back and be like, hang on a minute, you know, what are we telling ourselves here? What are we telling ourselves here? You need that break state, you know, where that sort of snaps you out of the emotion so that you can get back to objectivity and just go, okay, this is what I was telling myself. And then you can be the observer. Yeah. And when you're the observer, whatever you believe in terms of spirituality, higher consciousness, all of that type of thing, I could speak for hours on all of that because that's a big part of what I do. But when you can step back from what you're experiencing and be the observer of that experience everything becomes okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of this work, is that it allows you to step back and look at what's going on in your life objectively so that you can go, okay, that doesn't work for me anymore. Let's go this way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why the change happens so quickly, is
Yeah.
because you've got someone to hold you in that space to go, okay, I get that you're feeling that way. That's okay. You don't need to beat yourself up over that, but let's work through it.
Yeah. And
Big
I
difference.
love, big difference. You're right. And that observer, or in yoga, I'm a yoga teacher, as you know,
Yeah,
we call it the witness. So
totally.
becoming the witness, and that almost, like you say, gives you just that little bit of break. It's that little bit of degree of separation where you
Mhm.
can observe the situation but not be emotionally in it. And that's where we need someone to help us, because alone that can be,
It is so challenging, and
yeah.
that's what I found was a big difficulty for me and my journey. That's why it took me so long, because and to be fair, I wasn't alone all the time. I saw, psychologists and psychiatrists and, a lot of people throughout the years, but they weren't interested in moving me through it. They were interested in where it came from. And
Mm,
whilst part of my work is where it's come from, as soon as we know where it's come from, we work out what it is, we learn from it, we move on.
yes.
We don't need to repeat the process, because all that does is reinforce the same neurological pathways.
Yeah.
So we want something different, we focus on the different, and we start firing those neurological pathways. And again, this is all done through NLP as well. You start firing the new pathways and they get stronger, just like a river. If you redirect a river, it takes time to carve out the new path of the water, but then it
Yeah.
gets deeper and it gets wider. These get
Yeah.
stronger.
Yeah.
So it's a really, there is a scientific, it comes from both a scientific approach and a spiritual approach, and we just kind of dance between the two.
Yeah.
And it's because it's all made up of, fundamentally scientific research and study, but there is a spiritual aspect to the higher consciousness when you get there too, which is amazing.
And that's what I do love about any form of coaching. It is that moving forward. Exactly like you say, like I love counseling, psychology, that has a great place
It does.
for that healing and acknowledge. But at some point, we've got to want to move forward and move past that. And that's where some of these beautiful modalities that you work with people is so beneficial. Because, like you say, after the accountability, then there's the action.
Yeah.
And this is the new pathways or tracking towards that new future, not staying stuck like we do, I guess we've all done that. We probably always will, but hopefully not for as long.
And we all do it through different stages in life too. I know we were speaking sort of off camera about my personal journey. I'm getting married in a month, and this has brought up a whole heap of shadow work of old beliefs and old, perceptions of what married life is and what a man and a woman should do in a partnership, and all of these things that I hadn't even thought of. I'm turning 40 at the end of the year. I hadn't even thought of these things, and they're presenting themselves now to be cleared out before I go into the next phase of my life. So when I say I help people through transitions, this is why. Because you go through transitional events, transitional experiences in your life that you might need a little bit more help with.
Yes.
So this is what it is providing that support and that objectivity to say, right, where are you? Where do you want to be? Let's get you where you want to be, and let's do it fast. Don't waste 20 years.
Yes. Yeah, like we all have. So I wanted to talk, Courtney, you know that I love all things body acceptance, body love. And I did want to go here with you because I know that when you spoke, you'd shared just a few little, little sprinkles of your story around perhaps body image and the negative self-talk.
Yeah.
So many people struggle with body image and negative self-talk. How do you think NLP or hypnotherapy and your other modalities help reprogramming these negative patterns? What are some daily practices or exercises or or just how to foster a really helpful mindset around body image?
The first thing that I would say to anyone that's experiencing any type of negativity around their body is start asking yourself questions. Why do I believe that I need to be this way? Why do I believe that I'm, too heavy, or, my hair's not long enough, or my teeth aren't white enough, or I need, I have wrinkles that I shouldn't have, or whatever, whether you're not strong enough, whatever. And it can be people, there are both sides of the coin. I used to worry that I was too big, too fat, too large. Right. And that was because somebody had said something to me when I was so young that made me think, it was my grandmother. And I'd stepped on her scales just to, because they were in the bathroom, just to play around. I think I weighed something like 12 or 13 stone. And I don't know what that translates to now, but she said to me, without thinking, it was just a throwaway comment. She said, "Oh, little girls shouldn't weigh that much. We'll have to look at that." And that comment through my whole life made me think that I was too big. And that made me think that I was eating too much, or that I wasn't eating the right things. I had a beautiful blonde, tiny mother who is just, you met her when we met, so I was constantly comparing myself to her, and all of these stories would run in my head that made my self-value go down and down and down and down until I truly hated myself. And it's the recovery from that has come through the questions.
Yeah.
Because unless you ask yourself questions as to, okay, why do I believe this to be true? Number one, what am I telling myself? What is the story? Number two, is it true? Byron Katie wrote an amazing book, I've written a few, I think, that I've read. And she explains it very well, is, can I know that this is true? That's the biggest takeaway that I've heard of any of this is, just start questioning your beliefs. And I use it with every single client at every single stage of their transition, is what stories are you telling yourself? Because that is going to determine how much self-value you have and how you show up in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. With the questioning is wonderful. I even love the questioning line about where our beliefs come from when it comes to media. And even just recently, another podcast I did, just a solo one, was talking about who were the influences when we were growing up. And I was starting to go through, like, Elle Macpherson was a model, Claudia
100%.
Schiffer, Gwyneth Paltrow,
the
Kate
big
Moss.
four, yeah.
And you think about that image of a woman, and I am far from that. I'm a size 16. Okay. I am not tall. I'm 5'5". Like I'm not, and you start to think about our belief system at some point, and then comments like that from very well-meaning family members.
Loved me. She loved me. There was no,
because they've been grown up with that, make yourself small, shrink. And I like to think that there is a lot more diversity we're seeing now, only if you've curated your feed, though, if your algorithm feeds you that, because some of us are still seeing an algorithm that shows, and I'm the first to say that the diet culture now is just now wrapped in a beautiful green smoothie. It is still depriving, measuring, and that's a whole nother topic. But I think you're right. It starts with questioning and even putting, I feel like, light to that story that your very well-meaning grandmother who adored you said that. Just verbalizing that is incredibly helpful. And then, like you say, Courtney, with a coach like yourself walking the path alongside you and helping you lessen the energy of that comment and bring you now to the present.
Yeah, because what we do, and timeline therapy is so effective for this, and that's why I start off with that, with the negative emotions with any of my clients, is that once you learn where it's come from, you ask your unconscious, okay, why are you reminding yourself? Because repeated behavior is only your unconscious reminding you of something that you need to learn. That's all it is. So whether you're food addicted like I was, whether you're drug addicted like I was, whether you're alcohol addicted, whether you're addicted to people are addicted to Botox, and talking about algorithm feeds, my feed has been nothing but hair extensions, Botox, fillers, everything, because I've been looking things up for the wedding, right?
Yes.
So and even I love myself wholly and completely. Even I want to make sure I look best on my wedding day. So it's understanding, okay, if I choose to take this action, that's no problem, but where am I doing it from?
Yes.
Where am I doing it from? Am I doing it because I believe in that I lack in a certain way, or that I'm not good enough in a certain way? Or am I doing it because I love myself and I want my photos to be amazing that I look at, and I could walk down the aisle tomorrow and it wouldn't be a problem looking exactly the way I do. But there's no harm in wanting to look your best too. And I think it's the drivers that we need to examine. And, like I said, with timeline therapy, that gives us the awareness to go, okay, this is where it's come from. This is how it's affecting my life. This is what my unconscious is trying to remind me. What do I now want to believe that will serve me better? What action do I want to take now that will serve me better? And exactly as you're saying, curating your Instagram feeds as to things that support you rather than hinder you. And, stop comparing yourself to other people.
Yeah. I really do feel, though, around the body image stuff, Courtney, I feel like it doesn't really matter if you're a size 10, a size 16, or anything in between, or smaller or even larger. It's actually your mindset, because I know in my life, I have been the size 10. I've been I've been everything in between. And even at a healthy size 12 per se, mentally I was not well, because I still was beating up on myself. And I feel like it is absolutely the mindset work, because it's almost irrelevant to what size you are. I honestly believe that
nobody's thinking about you. Everybody's worried about themselves.
Yes, this is
Nobody's
exactly
thinking
right.
about you, and my partner was a big advocate for that, especially in the lead up to all of this, because we were talking about preparation and all of this. And I speak from my life because they're examples that I can use for people to understand that this is how it works, And we were talking about all of this, and he's questioning, he's going, well, what will that give you? If you look like this, if you dress like this, if you do this to your face, if you do this to your hair, what will it give you that you don't have already?
Yeah.
And that's what people like me do for the people that we see, is that, what do you not have now that you believe that getting that will make you a better person, happier? Especially around money. A lot of people around money and around physical aspects, it's always love and money that are behind the physical aspects that they're struggling with, which is a really interesting thing, but it's what drives us.
Yeah. So do you see that with clients, the wanting to have the stuff, let's say, and there's nothing wrong with having the stuff.
Nothing wrong with it. I love the stuff.
Yes, we all love the stuff. So, but the driver for the stuff is to feel a certain way.
Yep.
Would you say that is the main driver, or it's
100%? It's acceptance.
Acceptance.
It's acceptance. If you don't accept who you are and how you are going to look for external things that will give you that from other people, or that you believe will give you that from other people.
Yeah.
So Matt calls it pay on display, which I love it. He calls, everybody who's, taking, and don't get me wrong, I'm not blasting anybody, because I've bloody done it.
But it's really fascinating because at some level I feel like we teeter here. But go on. Yeah,
we all
tell
do
me.
it, and it's the, the curated Instagram feeds. It's the seeing somebody in Saint-Tropez with their sunglasses and their bag positioned on the table that show the designer labels and whatever. And don't get me wrong, I've done it. There's no judgment, because at one point in my life, that's how I was being validated too.
Yeah.
Was by things. And it's not, it's recent. Like it's not, it's probably only been the last few years that I've come out of that. And we all still have the neural pathways in there.
Yeah.
No matter how aware we are, they're still in there. So it's about understanding that if you're reaching for the body or the money or the things, having the awareness to go, okay, what am I buying into?
Yeah.
What am I not feeling within myself that I think that will be compensation for? And
Yeah.
that's why we see the rise in, sugar daddy dating and, people experiencing so many issues in their relationships at the moment because there is a lot of fear around not being able to provide for yourself, not being able to start your own business or fund your own business or make enough money to get the things to be accepted. And
Yeah.
we are driven as human beings. We have tribe mentality. As human beings, we need to be accepted. And if we
Mm.
don't have the acceptance within ourselves and within our environment, we'll look for things that might give us the edge.
Yeah, because that's it, isn't it, Courtney? The edge is if I'm seen to have the stuff,
Yeah.
it's almost like climbing the social ladder or the acceptance ladder. It almost like false economy hotwires you to
Yeah.
get you to, yeah, it's such an interesting
Yeah. So,
topic.
and that goes, yeah, and it's the same with looking a certain way, and body image as it is to material wealth.
Yeah.
And, it's not just, it used to be that men would strive for the material wealth, women would strive in the age of the supermodels, as we were discussing, right? Men would strive for the physical wealth, for the financial wealth, and women would strive for the physical because that's what would be attractive to the other.
Yes.
Right. And that's what would cause more acceptance. Now we're seeing that being turned on its head because a lot of women are saying, well, no, I want to earn my own money and work in my own business and all of that. So now everybody is trying to be accepted on all of these different external fronts. And that's why there's a lot of unhappy people in the world.
Yeah. That's exhausting.
Mm-hmm. Just talking about it, you think,
Yeah.
woo.
Yeah.
So I think that's why a lot of people are struggling on all fronts at the moment is because they feel that they have to compete on all fronts.
I agree. I feel that I witnessed that too in my life and sometimes, a lot of the times get caught myself. It's that constant coming back. And just recently I've declared I'm not using filters on Instagram.
I love that.
Courtney,
I
I
love
am
that.
struggling though.
Yeah.
Because,
You're
like
used to seeing yourself a certain way, edited. Yeah. Me too. I'm
and,
not
I, and yeah, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm almost 50. It's okay to let go of it's okay to not do that.
Yeah.
And look, I'm a big fan. I go, good lighting does wonders for the soul. But gee, when that lighting's not great.
Yeah. And this is the thing. And I think, it's come from, especially with the Instagram stuff and the editing, it's come from a place of wanting to look your best in every forum. A lot of us can't pay for the lighting, the makeup artist, the hairdresser, all of that. So to compete on an international stage, if you are a business owner, you need to look put together.
Yeah.
So you resort to apps or you resort to editing.
Yeah.
So it's come from a place of I want to present my best self, which we all do, which is a beautiful thing. But feeling like you have to do that to be accepted is where the problems come. And that if you don't feel that you can be accepted as to what your face looks like, what your body looks like, or how much money you make, or what you do for work, or how much money you don't make if you're on the bones of your ass.
Yeah.
To love yourself in those circumstances is very, very challenging for a lot of people.
Yeah. That's the work. And coming back to, your awareness and then accountability and then the action.
Yeah.
Your three pillars, which it's that awareness, being okay with not thinking that you're all that in a bag of chips and still showing up anyway, not having to do all the stuff. But that's the work, I feel.
Yeah. It really
Yeah.
is. And that's what we're all here to learn. I mean, regardless of what you think spiritually, my personal belief is that we're, eternal souls that just have a human experience when we come to this planet. That's just because that's how I feel in my gut, in my soul. I know that I'm here, for a good time, not a long time. And I'm here to learn a whole heap of lessons and help as many people as I can find that love and acceptance. That's why I'm here on this earth. That's why I went through everything I did, and how I learnt myself. And that's what I see people struggling the most on this planet, is just being who they are and understanding that they've got their own unique gifts and they don't need to justify that to anyone else.
Yeah. Or follow anyone else.
Yeah.
Show up authentically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the work.
Yeah.
So you have overcome your own obstacles.
Just a couple.
and it is wonderful to hear that you are about to get married, because I know your story includes obstacles of moving past unhealthy relationships. Are you happy to share a little bit about your journey and the key turning points that help you transform your life?
Yeah.
And what advice do you have for others that could be in your situation?
Yeah. So one of my favorite quotes, and I only learnt it when I did my training, and it was my future husband that said it, was, only when there's enough pain will change occur. And that one quote has resonated through every single event that I remember myself going through. Only when it got to a point where I could not continue the way that I was did I do something. And especially, with when I think about my past relationships, it was all driven by wanting to be accepted, by having low self-worth and wanting to be accepted. So I allowed people in my life that gave me a false sense of that, that made me their whole life so that they could control. Whereas all I was thinking was, oh, I'm their whole world and therefore I'm special. So that led me to a lot of abusive relationships where I wasn't able to live my own life. I had to live theirs. And I had to be there for them when they wanted me to be. I had to be exactly the way they wanted me to be at any given moment. Otherwise, I got in trouble. And boy, did I get in trouble. So overcoming that didn't happen until I got to the point where I hated myself so much, and I hated what I was experiencing on a daily basis so much. I was hiding broken. But like, one of the things I say, if anybody's interested, there's a video on my Instagram that's pinned to the top that goes through some of the things that I went through. And one of the most poignant times with me was, one of my boyfriends used to try and he alienated me from my family a lot, and I was very close to my family. This particular time was, he had thrown a bar stool at me and cracked 3 of my ribs when we were having a fight. And it was the day before I was meant to have family lunch. We used to go to Sunday yum chats with my family. He never used to go, but I used to try and get out and go. And I had to hide 3 broken ribs from my mother, who was my best friend, and my dad and my brothers. And I couldn't laugh. I couldn't sneeze because everything was, and my mum hugged me. And I broke down because the pain was so bad. I just couldn't, the emotional pain as well as the physical pain added up that day. And that was when I started asking questions. And that was when I was 23, and I turned 40 this year. And this is how long it's taken me to get to this point. And I reckon the change in my last 2 years has been the most fundamental, because until then I was stumbling around. I didn't know who to talk to. I was seeing psychologists, psychiatrists, and I was trying to work everything out. That's why I try and be very clear on the fact that this change happens fast when you have the right person and the right process, because I could have saved 15 years of hurt and betrayal and the patterns repeating if I had just asked for help. and found the help that resonated with me, and I didn't. And that I don't want anybody to ever live like that. I don't want them to ever live for that long in that type of pain. So
Yeah.
that's why I will talk to anyone I can. I will share any story I can, because you don't have to settle for something that's not working for you. And I think, the reason that I took so long is so that I would understand how important it is for people to get the help that they needed fast, so
Yeah.
that they don't lose the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, even though your journey, that's pretty full on, your journey. But when someone sits in front of you, your empathy is at such a high level because you've walked that path.
That's the thing. And
Similar but
I
different.
think there's a reason that I experienced what I did. And that's only one instance. I had things happen to me when I was very young, and that came out under hypnotherapy. I had somebody who messed around with me as a child. I tapped into all the memories and they were there clear as day. So that also led to it. I had somebody that I was dating for 6 months that actually got me pregnant and had a whole different family in a different city. So I found out, when I told him, I found out that, he had this whole other family, he had children, he had a wife, and I just needed to go away.
Wow.
So there is a reason that I have been through the experiences that I have, so I understand the depth of emotional pain that my clients are feeling. And trauma is relative. You can have the same depth of emotional pain regardless of whether you've been through systematic abuse for years or if someone's just hurt your feelings yesterday. The way that the mind processes trauma is exactly the same no matter what the degree.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people think, oh, I should be happy. My life isn't that bad. I should be happy. I should be. So they don't ask for help because they think it's not bad enough.
Yeah.
People are starving in, wherever, I shouldn't complain. But why would you not want to just deal with it and
Yeah.
move on?
Yeah.
Why do you have to pay the penance of misery just because somebody else has got it worse in terms of your perception?
But healing is also is tough.
Yeah.
Like asking for help, like you said, is massive. And then
Took me years.
yeah,
Took me
then
years.
being able to hold the energy of the healing and to stay, I guess, just present. And I mean, your first step is aware that, because sometimes it's just so much easier to pop it under the rug.
Yeah. And you can get so caught up in it, and it's happened to me recently. I've been so caught up in emotion, and the fact that Matt's a coach, my fiance is a coach, is very handy for these moments. But nobody is immune. A lot of the misconception out there is that, if you're a coach and you teach people this, if you're a therapist in any way, you have to have it all together. You are human. Nobody has it all together all the time. And I'm very honest about that. I say, I work with obviously my fiance. If I'm struggling with something, he's the first person I go to because he's a coach too and he gets it. He's trained as well. If I didn't have him, I'd be seeing somebody else.
Yeah.
If I'm struggling with anything outside of my area of expertise, the shadow work that's been coming up for me, I've got a call with somebody in Norway, a coach in Norway on, I think it's next week, to talk about some shadow stuff and some spiritual stuff that I've not experienced yet. It's all layers of the onion. And just when you think you have it figured out, there'll be another layer coming up ready for healing as well.
Yeah.
So understand that it's a journey and it's a transition.
Yeah.
And once you get that, then everything's okay.
Yeah. And I do say, Courtney, never trust a coach that doesn't have a coach.
Exactly.
Like you say, we are not immune. You need support as you move through as well. Yeah.
And some of my clients have gone on to become some of my best friends because, they understand once we go through this process, they get the depth of where they need to be inquiring.
Yeah.
So I'll talk to them. I'll be like, this came up for me, and then
Right.
it's your circle expands and your
Yeah.
circle elevates. And all of
Yes.
this world is vibration. And when you start doing that, when you start asking, bringing awareness to who's around you, who supports you, who doesn't, you start to elevate. And that's when we meet beautiful people like each other and we go to these
Yes.
beautiful events because you
Yeah.
start to attract more of what you are.
Yeah. I
And that's a
agree.
good thing rather than a negative thing.
Yes, it's brilliant because then when you get with people you're talking about, I say really high vibe stuff. I'm not interested in talking about other people or
No.
the weather or what, like, let's talk about the real stuff. And I think that's, you just start to, get with other people that just love to have a great, hearty conversation about the real stuff, which is
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And that's where you get authentic people that are willing to be raw as
Yeah.
well and willing to say what's actually on your mind. Like I was saying, with the wedding stuff and the shadow stuff that's coming up, I'm not scared to have those conversations because I know I'm perfectly imperfect in every way.
Yeah.
And so is everybody else out there. We're all
Yeah.
just at different stages dealing with different stuff.
Yeah. Would the old Courtney have been too afraid to talk, like thinking about you're about to
Terrified.
get married? Yeah. And not able to talk to your other half the way you do now. And of course, it's a testament to your fiance,
Yeah.
but the old Courtney wouldn't be able to express how she
The old
felt.
Courtney wouldn't have even spoken to her mother about it, and that's saying something. I tell my mum everything.
Yeah.
She's been like, everybody knows that without my mother and father, I wouldn't be here. But the amount of times that has been proven true over, they've pulled me out of situations that could have been very life-threatening. They were
Yeah.
life-threatening, so they could have been life or death. So, and I wouldn't have even been able to talk to them about that because I didn't talk to them about the abuse for many years.
Yeah.
So it's about coming to terms with it. When I say accountability, it's about coming to terms with, okay, I am in this situation now. Nobody is coming to save me. I have to get myself out of it. I have to ask for help.
Yeah.
And that's what, when I say no one's coming to save you, don't wait for the white knight. Nobody's going to read your mind. Nobody is going to understand how much you are struggling unless you say something. And it's
Yeah.
from that acknowledgement and that accountability of this is where I'm at and it ain't good. That's when you can start taking action to change things.
Yeah. Great. I love that framework, the awareness, accountability, and action.
Yeah.
So for any of our listeners who have perhaps experienced or are experiencing, like Courtney has, some pretty tough times. Yeah, I think the message here is reach out for help. You've got to put your hand up because no one can read your mind. Like you're saying, there is no white and shiny armor. You have to be your own.
You do.
knight in shining
And
armor.
there's one thing I will touch on too is there's a lot of fear around changing your circumstances, especially if you're in one of abuse. There are financial considerations. There are considerations more often than not around children. A lot of the time you have been alienated from your friends and your family. That happened to me. So I understand the fear around that, but just start asking questions. You don't have to have it all figured out. All you need to do is just find somebody external who can hold you in that space and start to break the situation down for you so that you can start seeing clearly again. Because like I said, you lose 80% of your brain function when you're in fight or flight. And let me tell you, if you're in a situation like that, you're in fight or flight every damn day.
Oh, yeah. And that's no place to be. There's no sweetness of life there.
No. So, and there, if financial stuff is a worry, there are free resources everywhere. People can get in touch with me by DMs on Instagram and I'll reach out. Don't let financial ineptitude or lack of finances stop you from trying to change. Because finances is just a flow of energy. That's all it is. If you're stagnated in finances or if you're stagnated in, that situation, it will all come when you start clearing it. And it can be a very scary thing for a lot of people, especially if they're in abusive relationships. So that's something I address right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Courtney. Your pearls of wisdom have been brilliant, and all of your details will be in the show notes. So if anyone is wanting to reach out to Courtney, please do. If any of this shadow work, or you love the sound of what Courtney takes you through, the timeline therapy sounds amazing.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
Unhook some of those old beliefs, get curious, and take accountability, awareness, and then take action. Sounds fab.
Yeah.
Thank you, Courtney.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, darling. Have you checked out my latest creation? Yes, I am a published author. I've written a book, 365 Days of Morning Magic. Manifest a life you love with clarity, calm, and joy. This little book is a daily guide that helps you set your intentions. I also invite you to join my free group, 21 Minutes of Morning Magic, on Facebook, where I gather regularly with you all and we go through a beautiful little process of yoga, some flowetry, setting an intention for the day. So if you'd love to be part of that, click the link below, and I hope you enjoy this beautiful little book.